I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I'm a musician and passionate music lover, and I wanted to delve deeper into new music in the independent scene around the world. I also saw this as a chance to help artists connect and share their stories, so if there's someone you hear and you want to find out more about, every podcast has links in the show description. Get involved, help this community grow, follow on the 10,000 Hours of Indie socials, you can find all the links in the show description. And also feel free to email me about anything music related, 10,000indie@gmail.com. I'm open to any ideas and love listening to your promos. Legs on Wheels are a five-piece progressive and art rock band based in Manchester, England. Starting as a bedroom project by Danny Murgatroyd in 2017, 2 years later it became a fully formed band. The second album, Gobble, came out at the end of March, and although a little late to the party when I heard it, I instantly got dragged back into my love for slightly off-centre prog Canterbury scene style. So, Danny, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the band name first. Probably something you've had questions from everybody who's ever interviewed you. Where the hell did that name come from?
It's a question I'm always happy to answer because it's a lovely story really for me. So the keyboard player in Legs on Wheels, George, me and him went to a sort of improvised music night that was featuring David Allen and some other musicians. So for those who don't know, David Allen founded first the band Soft Machine, and then when they sort of kicked him out, he founded
Gong.
The band Gong, which are still going to this day with, a sort of a reincarnated lineup.
No original members.
No original members, no, since David sadly passed away, but they continue with his blessing. I never got to see Gong with David in it, sadly. I had tickets for first the Glastonbury festival they were going to play, but they had to pull out because of David's health. And then another show in Leeds, I think, for the I See You album tour. But luckily, we did get to meet him at this night at Band on the Wall in Manchester. And we sort of, collared him for half a minute and had a quick chat. And then George, before the band really existed at this point, just said, give us a band name. I guess with a view to that's something we can pocket. And he just thought for a split second and then said, Legs on Wheels. And I have no idea where it came from, what was in his mind when he said it. But yeah, it seemed to fit. When the project Legs on Wheels did sort of get going, it seemed to fit really nicely. And as well as that, it's a really nice thing for us to be able to sort of carry a little tiny piece of David with us, because the Gong were quite a big inspiration back in the day.
I have to ask this question, and I don't mean to be condescending, but you're much younger than me. How the hell did you end up being so into prog?
I'm older than I look, I'm often told. But nevertheless, so George and I went to university together in Huddersfield, and they had a really good vinyl record shop there. It was called Vinyl Tap at the time. It was called Wall of Sound, but it's since changed management and it's now Vinyl Tap. But they had a basement floor in there where they kept all the sort of more grubby second-hand vinyls, and everything in there was £2. And I don't think they quite understood the value of what was in there, at least for people like us who were sort of just at the very beginning of our journey into discovering prog rock. And we got back catalogues of Yes, King Crimson, Genesis, all sorts from there. And it was just really mind-blowing stuff. And I've never really looked back. I mean, I've gone on to expand my musical horizons a bit, listening to other stuff. But prog was really like the first big kind of mind-blowing thing that I can remember since being like a teenager and listening to like pop punk and then hardcore music and stuff. So I think my friend initially got me into, or showed me Camel, showed me the Snow Goose, and then I think I saw their album Mirage in this shop, and I think that was the first prog album I bought. The rabbit hole just kept going from there.
Obviously, you've listened to a lot of prog through your times. What would you say are the sort of bands that have been most influential on what you do?
I'd say, early on it was kind of the classic UK 70s prog bands. So King Crimson, Genesis, Yes, and then a bit of Camel, a bit of Caravan as well, Soft Machine. And then I think the next big thing for me was jazz and sort of starting to get into that. I know that's not a specific artist, but just like I was delving into like they're fairly trad jazz at first, like Dizzy Gillespie, but then moving on to like Miles Davis and Chick Corea and stuff like that. Like I'm not like a jazz aficionado, nor am I an accomplished jazz player, but George and I both sort of dabble in that world, and we got the real book and would try and play through it, and just like jazz harmony, I think is something that I really love. And then Cardiacs were a big discovery for me. I wish I could have discovered them earlier in a way, but I think I would have been too young to probably just see them even, while Tim was still upright. Yeah, I had a big Cardiacs obsession a few years back. And I think for me, that was it took me a while to realize why I liked them so much. But I think it comes down to like, as a teenager, I was very much into sort of hardcore punk sort of thing, and then got into prog after that. And Cardiac seems to kind of fuse those two things in a really, a pretty unique way. And I think I was sort of like starting to head down that road, or was trying to get to something like that. And then I discovered them, and it was like, well, this is like beyond what I thought was, even possible, or just beyond what I could have imagined. Just the compositional sophistication of it, along with the sort of the punk attitude that makes the whole thing just seem almost like a joke. It's hard to put into words, really, but I love the marriage of those two things.
So Stuart Maconie has said the album is knotty, funky, whimsical, charming, whip-smart and adventurous. Legs on Wheels are one of the best things I've heard in years. How satisfying is it to get such a glowing review from somebody with Stuart's background?
It's amazing. I've only known about Stuart Maconie really for the past 4 or 5 years. He's one of those names that I'd heard around, but I didn't really know who he was. But having like engaged with, his Freak Zone show, mostly from trying to get on it, but like listening to it is great. And just like the sheer breadth and eclecticism of the stuff he has on there. So I have a lot of respect for someone who is willing and will like sort of showcase that music from such a broad array of genres and styles and everything. And so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for the man. It's taken a while to get to this point, but it feels now like we're finally starting to get our music in front of the right people. And also, I think the fact that I think until this new album, I just think it's like now the music is good enough where people are paying attention. I think we've kind of been warming up a bit for the past 2 releases. A lot of people like really love the first stuff. I don't mean to poo-poo it, like our EP and our first album, But for me, this is where we've sort of come into our own.
So you started this as a solo project. How has writing a song developed since becoming a full band?
In the early days, so I put out an album under the name Legs on Wheels. The album's called Iguana Salad, but I've since sort of archived it, or it's still available online, but I've put it just under my own name instead, because once we got the band together and we started recording, we thought, okay, let's make this the sort of year zero of the band. And also that album was very like roughly produced, because it was just me doing it in my bedroom, and like I was doing it way too intensively so that I was ruining my hearing whilst mixing it, which is never a good idea. So the final mix is like quite brittle, I think, and a bit harsh. But the way I was writing it, I guess, was they're not too different from what I do now, just like coming up with stuff on guitar or keys. But I guess the difference is that then I would just be like tracking stuff one on top of the other and just like sort of building up the song as I go. Whereas now it's a bit more like I'll prepare. Well, maybe it is the same actually, because I'll often work on a demo and then I'll bring that demo to the band. But then I guess the difference then is that we sort of work on it as a band, and people will come up with their own parts and bring something else to it or make suggestions. So it's really nice to be able to collaborate in that way, whereas I wasn't really doing that before. And George as well has like contributed songs now, which is great because he's a really, really good songwriter in his own right. I think I've just really become a better songwriter just through doing it enough. And I think I've written most of my bad songs now. I'm sure there's more to come. There's always more.
I was going to say, you've never written the last bad song. There's always one more in there.
For sure, yeah. The trick is to recognize it and just scrap it while you can. I've become less meandering as well. In the early days, my songs could be a bit meandery, whereas now I try and like have a bit more cohesion to them. Sometimes meandering is good, but I think just being mindful of when you're doing it and whether you want to,
So where do your lyrical ideas come from? Is it everyday life experience? It doesn't seem like it. You do seem quite whimsical in terms of your lyrics. It sort of takes a direction and then you could go in so many directions from the first verse or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it varies. I think, especially early on, but also across Gobble, I'm writing a lot about like quite big, I guess, heavy-ish themes. I like people to be able to interpret lyrics however they want, but at the same time, I did have like particular meanings in mind when writing them. That's obviously doesn't mean that it's the only correct interpretation. But yeah, lots of stuff about like living under capitalism, exploitation of both people and animals. I guess with like Oysters on the Half Shell and Dinner Time for Rat, you kind of got that going on. Peekaboo is just about like, I was reading the Book of Trespass, which is a great book about the history of sort of land enclosure and land ownership in the UK. And so that song's just about sort of like walls, physical and psychological, and like land rights, if you like. But I don't like to be too on the nose with the lyrics. So I hope that I achieve that, because I just think it's more interesting and more poetic as well if you can sort of say something without saying it too obviously and just sort of create interesting imagery or interesting like combinations of words that people might not expect. Although these days I've written a few songs at least that are a bit more sort of down to earth and specific and about something very specific that is a bit more silly, less whimsical and more like down to earth. So we'll see how it progresses. Yeah, I don't want to get stuck in a particular style for too long, I think.
I'm really glad the album finishes with the 10-plus minute Masteroid. That's how I think you should end a prog album.
Yeah, it had to go there, I think. That's a George song, and I love it. It's fantastic. And just while we're on it, I would shout out his now sort of dormant, I guess, project called Gandhi's Hands. And they've got 2 albums, and it's basically a George songwriting project. But, you know, I was in the band for a time. I did a few gigs. But the second album, Bitter Everythings, is fantastic, and it's criminally under-listened because he's not really done any promotion for it. But it's a really, really good album. And Masteroid is a George song, and yeah, it seemed like the obvious choice to close the album, really, doesn't it? It's like, it's the epic, and it feels like a journey.
Whereas you've got Oysters on the Half Shell as the opener, which, as you say, it's got content and meaning, but it's still quite a light-hearted, quite short song, and it's a great opener as well.
Yeah, I don't think we had to think for long about what would open and close the album. I think it was fairly obvious. And yeah, I feel like Oysters, it works as a kind of opening statement, I think. I feel like there's a little bit of everything that's to come almost. You know, it has like the intense moments. It has some more like laid back melodic stuff.
So what song on the album are you most proud of, and why?
That's a tough question, because you listen to an album so much when you're making it and mixing it that by the time it's come out, it's like you never want to listen to it again. But I love playing the songs live. If we play a song too much, it can become a bit staid and a bit stale. But like we try not to overplay songs. Sorry, I am getting to an answer. I'm just sort of in prog fashion and meandering my way to it. I'm proud of them in different ways, I guess. I'm proud of Peekaboo just because it's the most sort of concise, almost pop song that I've written. Whereas, you know, it was challenging for me to get from writing long, expansive things to a short pop song. And I think it's often like more difficult. And I feel like it has a good momentum to it that never lets up. So I'm proud of having done that. It's a tough one. I'm Waiting for His Drowning is a bit of a sleeper hit, maybe. I just remember wrestling with it for so long, and there's so many sections that I like, and it's quite intricate and difficult. Yeah, I couldn't pick one, to be honest with you, man. It's like, not to say that I'm like proud of them all and they're all great, but just that it's hard to pick one. I see them all as like just an attempt to do something, and I think I've mostly succeeded at doing those things. But it's up to the listener to decide, really.
So also the album artwork is immense. Who designed it, and how much input did you have in the process?
It's so good. I mean, we had zero input because amazingly the artwork it predated the album by an Italian artist called Federico Della Putta. He has a website, which I believe is just federicodellaputta.com. Good luck spelling his name. I think we found him because initially we were going to work with the same artist who'd worked with us for the previous 2 releases, but he's kind of a bit of a hot shot these days and animated like a segment for like a Coldplay music video, and he commands a high price, and he's a friend of ours, and so he was sort of willing to do it, but also he was very busy, and he kind of intimated to us that like he's worth a lot more than we were able to pay him, and we were like, yeah, that's completely fair. And then I think our guitarist Alex just had this guy Federico on Instagram. I don't know quite how, but he already followed him and suggested we have a look at his stuff. And we had a look, and it honestly felt like destiny. He had numerous artworks that seemed to relate to the sort of world of the album, from like specific animals that are mentioned in it, because that's something that weirdly comes up a lot in the album is animals, to just like the overall vibe. It was quite striking, really. And so we thought, okay, it's got to be this guy. But now, which one do we pick? Because there were at least 2 or 3 that were really good artworks that, you know, we could see being the album cover. But I think most of us were really taken straight away with that one because it is just so bold and colorful and kind of vivid. And I think Alex and Federico went back and forth. There's like a chain of maybe 200 emails of like making tiny adjustments, because Federico was great and he really like wanted to make it as right for us as he could, and just making like tiny adjustments here and there. I think by and large it remains the same, but yeah, they were like fiddling with how black is the black and all this stuff.
So on YouTube, you've released videos for 3 of the tracks on the album. Apes, in particular, is a bit of a strange one.
Yeah. For some people, I think it's like the black sheep of the album. But in terms of the video, I think it's just a silly romp. I think like it's, you know, not to give the game away. Like you can read, and I can read, and I have read, you know, like meaning into it, and I think there is a degree of meaning there. But you can also just enjoy it as just like a silly song that's just about apes having a good time. But I guess, you know, one of the things is maybe it's a bit trite, but like, oh, how different are we really from, you know, our primate ancestors? And so it seemed like an easy way to go as well, and a funny way to go, was just to have us dressed as apes doing, you know, quite human things, walking the dog, lifting weights, doing the ironing, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in mid-process of explaining to my 5-year-old how it works and how we have descended from apes. So maybe I need to show him that video too.
Yeah, that's a good primer for it. Yeah.
You've got some pretty weird-looking creatures on your T-shirt designs as well, but there's no legs with wheels.
No, that's true. I mean, we have a singular leg with a wheel on it on the cover of our EP. But I think in general, we try to avoid going down the obvious route. And so like the weird creature on the T-shirt, on the actual album cover, which Mario Radev designed, that creature is walking on like some sort of treadmill, and there's like little gears or wheels attached to the ends of the treadmill. So like the legs are there and the wheels are there.
Just not together.
Yeah, because I feel like we don't need... People can picture their own legs on wheels. You know, it's right there in the name. We don't need to like feed it to you.
So you've got 10 dates coming up before the end of the year as it stands, including 4 dates supporting... I've put psychedelic rock legends Gong, but obviously the band that exists now are not the psychedelic rock legends, but they did get the okay from David Allen. How have you ended up staying in communication even though David Allen's not around anymore?
I mean, I know it's not the same band, but I still, you know, I'm pinching myself. It's amazing and a real kind of dream come true to be supporting them. But the way that happened was... So we've been trying to sort of get under their nose for a while, and I saw Carvus with Utopia Strong, you know, his project with Steve Davis. And I tried to shove our EP, which had just come out, under his nose then, but I think I did it in quite a clumsy way. I was a bit nervous, and I don't think it went well, but I don't think he remembers that. That was a long time ago now. And then since then, our guitarist Alex had a much more elegant and dignified meeting with him at one of his solo shows, I think in Todmorden. And I think also it might have helped that we did an acoustic version of Apes and put it up on YouTube. And in that, Alex is wearing his Carvus Torabi tank top. And I suppose we were getting into his algorithm a bit at this point, just by engaging with Carvus's stuff and Gong stuff and what have you. And then Alex and I, not long ago, we went to Carvus's solo show at Night and Day in Manchester. He was already, I think we'd heard from him on Instagram by this point. He'd complimented the album. So yeah, he had listened to it, which was great. And he was a big fan. And he's told us that a couple of times, which was really lovely. And so we sort of just wormed our way in there. But then we had a nice conversation with him after his show at Night and Day. And he was a really friendly guy, as you know, as you can imagine. And he did say, like, oh, we should play together at some point in some capacity. I sort of jumped at it and I was like, well, yeah, who do I have to email, you know? And he sort of was a bit coy, or was a bit like, oh, well, you know, it's all done through an agency and stuff. We're not used to that in a way because we're just so independent. We're like, well, if we want to make a thing happen, we'll just make it happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so some time passed. And then a few weeks ago, my friend saw that they were playing that Shipley gig in Kirkgate Community Centre. And he messaged me saying, look, Gong are playing this like tiny venue near me. You should try and support them. And I was like, yeah, great idea. So I messaged Carvers and said, hey, if you're looking for a support for this, that'd be great. And he said, oh, it's not really me that handles it, but I'd love to have you. And I'll put it to the other guys and see if the agency is cool with it, etc. And then they came back and said, we're looking for support for like a bunch of shows. We couldn't make most of them, annoyingly. So we then looked at their tour, which it turns out might be their last tour for a while. So I'm glad we're getting in now. And just like looked at other UK dates that we might want to do. And then we sent them a list and say, we want to do these dates. Are any of these good for you? And then, yeah, we've landed on 4 that we're doing with them, which is brilliant. And it's a nice, you know, we're going up to Glasgow, going all the way down to London. And then we got a couple just in the Northwest. So I'm still giddy about it, to be honest.
The next question sort of leads on from that. Have you found it difficult to get shows because you're quite a niche genre?
Kind of. There was a time when it felt like we were being asked to do shows fairly often, but that doesn't happen so much now. And I don't know why, but I think it's not really a problem for us, because I think at some point we just became frustrated with relying on promoters, or a promoter would try and put us on with like a 2-piece synth pop duo. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm all for like variety on a bill, but like this just seems like a horrible idea. And so we just started putting them on ourselves, you know, like booking the venues, promoting it ourselves and all that. So I think we're kind of more comfortable with that way of doing things anyway. Even though, you know, it can sometimes be more work, but we've gotten better at it. You know, I sort of learned how to put on a gig. I used to find it quite stressful, but I think I find it easier now. It is weird being a prog band, because while I think it is maybe having a bit of a renaissance, or at least we're trying to force one at least. Yeah, you don't see a lot of like prog bands being put on shows, or like that many successful bands. But I think there are a lot of bands today, so I'm going off on a tangent now, but there are a lot of bands that sort of have proggy elements to their music and are doing really well.
You've got the live shows we talked about upcoming, but what else is going on with the band in the future? Are you already writing some new songs for the next album, or are you having a bit of a pause on that front? There's
rarely a pause when it comes to writing. Like I'm always coming up with stuff, or, you know, trying to come up with stuff at least. Last autumn, George and I went to Snowdonia and just stayed in this like remote little boathouse, I think it is. But and we went there with like an 8-track tape recorder and, you know, mixing desk and a bunch of other bits and bobs, with a view to just like recording stuff in a beautiful sort of isolated environment. And it turned out to be a really good house for recording in. And we sort of, you know, got into the workflow of working with tape, which we've done before, but like it was nice to go back to it, where, you know, every take feels like much more of a commitment, because you can't just like easily comp the best take together. It's like, no, this is it. And if you don't do it, we've got to do it all again. And we kind of recorded like the bones of an album, really. I think there's a couple more tracks to be put on it. That's something that it's a very different feeling album to Gobble and to previous stuff. It's just a different vibe. But we're hoping to get the whole band back in that same house later this year to sort of try and finish it, basically, and get everyone's input on it. So there's that. Whether that's the next album, I don't know. We could just keep it in the back pocket. But then alongside that, there's other songs that are a bit more in the current vein that we're in, that we're working on with the band. And I've got like a backlog of songs. So it might just be a matter of like, you know, choosing the best ones. George has got some new songs. So there's no shortage of material, basically. I'm keen to increase our productivity and put out an album, because there was 3 years in the end between the release of Legroom and Gobble, and that's too long for my liking. There are reasons for that. But I think we're in a situation now where I think it's quite feasible to speed up our release rate So I hope we can do that.
Might we see a single before the end of the year, or are we definitely looking to 2027?
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, I think that's something to aim for. We've already put like one new song in the set, and we're looking at more in the live set. So the room that we rehearse in seems to have pretty decent recording capabilities. So if we can get good sounding recordings in there, then I think we'll be away.
So the final question, what music are you listening to at the moment that people may not be aware of and should take some time to check out?
Okay, well, I've been on a big, people are aware of the Beach Boys, but maybe not everyone is aware of, the quality and the diversity of the late 60s, early 70s Beach Boys. So I've been on a massive kick with them. The other band that I've been exploring is Of Montreal. Do you know them?
Oh, yeah, good band.
I mean, they obviously have Kevin Barnes' sort of funk disco dance period, which, I've sort of gone through most of it, but it's not really for me. But the early stuff, and actually the latest album he just dropped is feels a bit more in keeping with the early stuff. But their fourth album, Coquelicot, and then the one before that as well, The Gay Parade, I think they're just really strong, psychedelic, a bit Beach Boys-esque at times. It's like if the Beach Boys did way more drugs or something, I don't know, but...
I don't think you could get Brian Wilson to take more drugs, even in the 60s.
It's true, yeah. I discovered an artist recently called Clark Sound. I think he plays in a band called Improvement Movement, who I've not checked out, but he has a couple of solo records. The latest one is much more stripped back. I've not actually delved into it properly, but the second to latest album called What Is Music is really, really great. And it's just him recording everything. And it does have that feel to it, which can be a good or a bad thing, but it's a really meticulous, really nice sounding, sort of jazz inflected indie pop rock album. It's tough to describe, and it's very proggy at times. So I really recommend Clark Sound with a K, K-L-A-R-K Sound. His album What Is Music is fantastic.
So for people wishing to find out more about Legs on Wheels, check out their website, legsonwheelsband.com, and they can be found across socials on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Bandcamp, and SoundCloud. Plus, if you really like what they do, you can subscribe to their Patreon for just £3 a month as well. The latest album, Gobble by Legs on Wheels, is out now on Dismembers Club Records and is available physically via their Bandcamp on vinyl and CD and can be streamed via all the usual platforms. Danny, thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking to you.